Oh, hello there. Yes, it's the weekend. I just wanted to have a look at a particular article in the Telegraph today, which is about an open letter to the Education Secretary about gender stuff in schools. I don't say where it comes from, but the letter's up on transgender trend. Yes, there are a group of people that aren't keen on the transgender trend. Anyway, let's have a look at the letter, because it's quite intriguing. Let's have a look. Yes, well, this weekend we've got a lot of ministers going above and beyond their remit. They're very concerned about communists working in the State Department. Teachers influenced by the transgender ideology. There are patterns of speech, and one of the things that we often talk about when sociology is something called restricted speech, and it's a way of thinking about what goes on in schools and the way that we teach children to write and speak formally. Those kind of things come in the later teenage years, generally speaking, with maturity and a certain level of academic skill. The open letter to our glorious Education Secretary Gillian is written with language that I'm going to suggest here and now doesn't come from a couple of 14-year-olds. I'll read out 3 paragraphs and just going to point these things out. Sometimes students will hand in work to teachers and the teacher will know instantaneously that it hasn't come from the students because of the type of language that's used. I mean, if a child is going to use the word ostentatious, you merely have to ask them what it means. If they don't know, they haven't written it. Yeah, sorry about that, AI. You've got a distance to go yet. Anyway, let's actually have a look at these 3 paragraphs. We're both, along with 72% of students from other schools across the UK, according to Policy Exchange, had lessons on gender ideology in schools, and every time it's presented as the complete truth. In schools across the country, kids like us are being told that girls can have penises, humans can change sex, that there are 72 genders, and that gender identity is innate and unchangeable. Despite NHS guidance stating that children who identify as transgender may be going through a phase, this must stop, and if students are to be taught about gender identity, it must be presented in a neutral manner that specifies that this is a belief system, not fact. Right, okay, so anyway, these 2 definitely real 14-year-olds are going to be up to date with policy papers from the Policy Exchange, especially ones that, came out about 2 months ago. They also are up to date with NHS guidance as well, which is a little bit unusual for a 14-year-old, but not beyond the realms of possibility. It's beyond the realms of possibility, obviously. Yes, and must be presented in a neutral fashion, a neutral manner. Again, perfectly ordinary language that 2 ordinary 14-year-olds will definitely use. Right, next paragraph. This is literally the next paragraph. As well as this, teachers must remain neutral when discussing this topic in lessons. We've both experienced times when biased teachers attempt to implicate gender ideology in innocuous topics. Innocuous. I'm 14, me. For instance, claiming that Zeus, the Greek god, was non-binary. Right, okay, I do not believe that in the slightest. I cannot think of any context where in a school a Greek god, especially Zeus, would be described as non-binary. I just don't believe it. Or that Lady Macbeth was gender fluid. Again, they're up to date with their Greek gods and Lady Macbeth. They might be studying Macbeth. I don't think they are, though. Teachers also shouldn't be asking students their pronouns, especially on the basis of non-conformity, whatever that means. Notice we've moved from kids to students in the language there. That's different, isn't it? Or their sexuality, sexual preference, both of which raises major safeguarding concerns. Yes, they're also very concerned about safeguarding at 14, as you are. Right, literally the next paragraph. Some schools, including previously one of ours, think about how tortuous that particular phrase is, feature pride flags in the corridors, with labels such as genderqueer, non-binary, demi-boy, polysexual, among others, and include books in the library on inappropriate topics, such as Beyond Magenta, which includes a 6-year-old who has sex, and fails to condemn the fact that this was unlawful due to the child being significantly underage. Right. So there's a book in the library, very precisely, that they're very up to date with. I'm sure this hasn't been written by an adult pretending. If schools are going to provide books promoting gender ideology, they should be required to feature books offering a different point of view, such as Irreversible Damage by Abigail Shearer or Trans by Helen Joyce. Yes, because you would be, wouldn't you? You'd want to have a range of books. It's the sort of thing that 14-year-olds, two 14-year-old females, just ordinary females who are definitely 14 and not their mums, definitely 14, are going to ask for. Now, as I say, you can make up your own mind about this, but I'm willing to bet that these people may or may not exist. All right. However, the phrase "got a lot of help from their mum" comes to mind. I don't believe any of this. I don't believe any of this stuff at all. This is a very, very, very distinct power grab on an authoritarian basis by our present administration. You know, the sight of Kemi demanding various things which are completely outside of her remit is really quite astounding. Really quite astounding and very worrying. Because if you're going to believe that these things are going on in schools, which they're not, then you're going to agree that they need new laws against it. We will get our transgender guidelines next week, maybe, from the government. However, I'm willing to bet that they're going to be, as I've said before here, completely unworkable. Completely unworkable. Which in many ways is the point, isn't it? Because Kemi and Gillian and these two 14-year-olds won't be on the receiving end of it, because most of them don't exist. And in terms of government leadership and policy, the two ministers of state don't either.